Hey Matt, how wide should I make my exterior shutters?
Well, that's a great question, Mr. Customer. So when doing a double window like this, there's a couple of ways that you can address the window with exterior shutters. There are wrong ways and right ways, but for most of our customers, it's more of what looks best for them. So the most important thing is to have a conversation at the window with your customer. When I'm looking at a window like this, the first thing I like to talk to the customer about is height, because it can be a little bit simpler to determine than the width sometimes. So in a brick opening like this, what I tell folks is there's the historically accurate method, and there's also the aesthetically pleasing method.
Are there train tracks nearby?
Large ones. So if this shutter were made to actually close in the window back in the early 1900s to protect their home, the shutter is going to sit and close inside this brick mold opening. So your shutter would actually sit on top of this piece of trim. It would fit inside this piece of molding. The window wouldn't look like this because that's not how windows were done 100 years ago. It actually would continue to close inside this opening all the way up, and that's where our height would stop. So this shutter, in this situation, the historically accurate method, our shutter height would be 69 3/8 inches because it would fit inside that brick mold. Now, the aesthetically pleasing method that a lot of people choose to do is to have it actually fit the entire brick opening. In that case, I would measure here. So we're at 72 3/4, a difference of several inches. Anywhere in between those two numbers can be okay as long as it's what you discuss with the customer. There's not a wrong or right answer for non-functional decorative shutters. Usually what I do is I take the overall opening. If the customer likes the aesthetically pleasing thought of I don't want the shutters to look too small, I would take that 72 3/4 opening and I would probably reduce it to an even 72, a little bit less than what the overall opening is. And that's how I would determine my height. Next, I would have the conversation with the customer about the width of the shutter. In this situation, on a double window like this, if we were putting our shutters on once again in 1900 to protect our house, typically what you would have is you would have a bifolded shutter. Bifolded meaning you would have two panels on each side of the window that would bifold out and cover the entire opening. And as we said earlier, those shutters would fit inside this brick mold across the way. So our overall width would be 30 inches for the bifolded pair, or 15 because there's one in front of the other. So you'd have a 15-inch shutter. Now in a space like this, if we did 15-inch shutters, I'm always going to hold my tape measure up and show them this is about what a 15-inch shutter would look like. It would be about this wide. Well, they say, well, for a double window, that seems kind of small. I don't want them to look cheap and out of place. So at that point, I would usually recommend going in some excess of what that bifolded size would be. Typically on a window like this, I'm going to use even numbers, and I would say I would go to an 18 to 20 inch wide shutter is what I would put. I would hold it up and say, if we're at 18, we're going to be out here. It's a good proportion to the size of the window, so it looks larger than a window that was a single window, but it's not too heavy to where it's overpowering. And at that point, I would let them decide 18, 20, or 15 as far as the width goes. Once again, there's no right or wrong answer. People aren't going to be using these to close and lock their windows. The main thing is they want it to look proportional and to look really nice because they're trusting us to be the experts. I would not personally do a 28-inch wide shutter on this window, but there are some people that will want a full width shutter. Once again, I'm going to hold it out and I'm going to show them this is how wide a 28-inch shutter would be. It's going to be massive. And if they want that, I'm also going to look around my window to say, if we do 28 inches over here, we're going to be coming in right behind this light and it might cause problems, or you might have an electrical outlet or some other obstruction. We've had it with a hose bib for someone to connect their water pipes to. So you always have to look for obstructions when you're doing your width. This particular window, we actually used an 18-inch shutter is what we did on these windows. And as you can see, once it's installed,
Three hours later. Oh, that's pretty good. Pretty quick. That's really tight. I don't think you're going to get it on very easily.
once it's installed, you're sitting about 3/4 of an inch off of the window. and it fits and feels nice. It gives you a nice proportional look on the window, which is what the customer truly wants. But all that is a conversation to have, just like we just did, with a tape measure in hand at the window, discussing exactly how we want to do them. And then once you measure one and you determine what those parameters are, you will apply those parameters to the other windows on the house, and you will still measure every window because they're not always going to be the same size.
Good.
Do you want to